Howdy folks, Craig and Ray here on the third floor, and we're going to talk about how to hire a crew. Quick disclaimer, when we filmed this, the M3e was still in open beta, so some of the details we talk about might change, but thematically everything should remain about the same. Okay, let's talk about kind of the process we go through. So, you and I have decided to play a game of Malifaux 3rd Edition, and we have
good
already...
decision.
Yeah, that's right. And we've already determined the pool of what strategy we're going to play, the pool of schemes we're going to pick from. We already know what the
deployment's
going to be. So now comes the big thing, which is, picking a crew. And something I've always loved about Malifaux, actually, because
Absolutely.
You don't, unlike other games, it really can behoove you, even if you're making tweaks at the end, because you're given so much information, it really behooves you to build your crew on the spot.
Right, and it's like one of the things that's very common to do is to kind of like have a core that you can work with. And the really great thing about M3e is that you get that core kind of at the start because, kind of your keywords help you there. But having that core and being able to flex that to address what you're dealing with is it's one of the great draws of Malifaux in general.
I agree. So let's kind of talk about the process. So the first thing is you would pick a faction, I would pick a faction, we would declare factions.
Right.
So the first thing that I know is I know what faction you're going to play.
Yep.
Now, knowing that information, I look at the pool of masters and the faction that I've declared, and I pick a master, you pick your master, and we reveal that. So now think about how much information we have going into this.
Absolutely.
We know deployment, we know the pool, we know the strategy, we know the faction we're playing against, we know the master we're playing against.
Yeah.
So now we're going to hire the crew.
Right. And the really important thing about this is like we mentioned just a minute ago with the M3e keyword thing. Knowing the master means you know the keyword.
Right.
And that just opens up a world of possibilities because it's a skill cap too. Skill cap too, because knowledge of the meta, knowledge of keywords in general becomes important. And that's always been important in editions of Malifaux is knowing what your opponent does. It's really important about any war game you play. Yep. Knowing what your opponent can do gives you a leg up. And this is taking that to the next level because not only do you know what faction you're playing, which gives already kind of an identity, like, Neverborn are going to be not as ranged heavy, 10 Thunders are going to be highly mobile, stuff like that, Reses are going to have a bunch of hard to wound type things, stuff like that. You get general feels of what people are going to be playing when they declare that faction. But once you know the master, there's a world of difference between playing against, for 10 Thunders, a Yoku Hamasaki versus, say, a Shenlong. Or in playing, even more extreme examples would be like in Neverborn, if you're playing something like Nekima.
Right.
Or Nekima, for those who pronounce it that way. Her crew is just a murder machine versus something like Pandora, which is a completely different style you're going to have to deal with.
Now, the one thing that I do like, though, is, in previous editions of the games, how much knowledge you had of other models really could make a big difference. I mean, granted, you and I would play and I'd say kind of, what does this model kind of do? And, anybody who's a decent guy or girl is not going to do gotcha stuff. But gotcha stuff happened in Malifaux.
It has to.
I think at first I thought, this could get even more complicated with the newest edition. But the more I think about it now, it's not... You really have a better sense of what the crew's going to do when you hear the master. So it's not a matter of I need to learn, all 70 models in the 10 Thunders faction. No. I just need to know really kind of get an idea of what the 7 different keywords are.
Right.
And kind of what to expect when I see them.
Yeah, and that's something that from a design perspective is a fantastic decision because for those who may not have been exposed to Malifaux 3rd Edition yet, and you really should expose yourself. It's a great edition of wargaming. Each keyword has some unique capabilities that are only for that keyword.
Right.
And that means that even if you don't know what any of the models do, you can still have an overall idea of what the keyword does.
Yep.
And that's just money for people who are trying to get into the game, and even for people who just want to play at a slightly higher level than casual.
Yep.
They want to start going to tournaments. They want to dip their toes in that competitive water. It's not quite as devastating as it used to be, because if you see like a Parker crew and you know that Parker's keyword is that they all have running gun, which they all have gunfighter, so they're all going to be charging and shooting everywhere, like you already have some good information there. And you just need to fill in a couple of extra little blanks, and you can make some intelligent decisions on how to build your crew from that alone.
So let's talk about the restrictions.
Yeah.
So again, to bring us where we are now is we've already picked our pools, we've got our strategies, we've picked our masters, we know what each other's masters are. The first thing is that I have the ability to hire anybody, any model that has my keyword for their cost.
Yes.
And that's regardless of faction, right?
It is regardless of faction. There's a couple of Marcus, the dual faction masters come to mind specifically here, like your Jan Lo, your Marcus. I think Hoffman's also dual faction. Those really come to mind because they dip so heavily into their pool. Mei Fang, and there's a couple of like satellite models, like Yoku from Ten Thunders. She has like Hinamatsu, who's a Neverborn model, but it's the only one that she gets access to. And there's a couple of keywords that do that have access to random models from another faction, and it's a good thing to just scan through the faction models for those keywords, because every now and then you see an outlier that's like a really, really good model. Like again, Ten Thunders, just because it's the I know the best. Asami has a Bayou model in the Akaname that is a fantastic little scheme runner that if you don't look for those external models can kind of, you're missing out on a tool in your toolbox. Right. But by and large though, it's pretty self-contained, and that's fantastic because you pretty much know, like, there might be one extra model here. If I'm a dual faction, I've got them split, but your keyword's your keyword. And that just kind of is an awesome thing.
And I get them at cost.
Yeah, you get them at cost.
Yeah. So now, outside of that, I now have access to all of the versatile models in my declared faction. I get them at cost as well.
Yes, absolutely get those at cost.
Last but not least, I now have access to my entire faction. The only thing is if the model I'm hiring in my faction is not versatile,
right,
or does not share the keyword of my master,
right,
I have to pay an extra stone.
Right.
So if it's a cost 6 model, I'm paying 7.
You're paying 7.
The last thing that's important to note is totems. So the totem of your master has a hiring cost of 0.
Yes.
And
so clarification of that, the totem of your leader.
Correct. Yes.
If you pick a master as your leader, that master gets their totem for free.
Yeah.
If you pick a henchman as your leader, then that henchman gets the effigy of that faction for free.
Right, and that's on each effigy card. Is that thing if you have a henchman as a master. But one thing I think is key to point out though about the totems, because I didn't think about this until it was pointed out to me. It's not that you get your totem for free. It's that the totem of your master has a 0 hiring cost. So for totems that are like, you have 2 or 3 of them,
right,
I could hire them, right? So, for example, I'm a resurrectionist and play Rezzers and love Reva.
Right.
I could bring in 2 corpse candles.
Yeah, they
at no cost.
They're same thing with like Shenlong, who gets aspiring students. He gets 2 aspiring students. And then on the flip side, you have stuff like Dreamer, who gets Lord Chompy Bits, who on his own would be like an 8 sewn model, and you're getting it for free.
Yeah.
And that's something that they did that's kind of actually that's really intelligent in some of their design. Is that you have some masters that cost a little less, but their totems are big, gnarly henchmen, like Lynch and Dreamer. And then you have some masters that are like really like hardcore masters, but their totem, they have a couple like little totems.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool how they balance that out.
I agree. So quick recap. You choose your faction. You declare that. You choose your master. You declare that and reveal that. You then hire your crew. Anybody with a keyword, regardless of faction, you can hire at cost. Anybody within your faction that's versatile, you hire at cost.
Yep.
And then any model in your faction that is not versatile, doesn't share your keyword, you can hire at a +1 stone.
At a +1 stone
cost. Now, we have 50 stones to work with.
Yeah, a lot of
The
stones.
master doesn't cost us anything.
Nope.
The totem doesn't cost us anything. So we've got 50 stones.
Right.
So slowly we're going to build our crew up. What's key though is what we leave off, right? We're not probably not going to ever go all the way to 50. So I want you to talk about that.
So Soulstones has always been a really big thing in Malifaux, and for those who may be new to the edition for Malifaux, it's one of the many resources you have access to. You have your model's your resource, the Fate deck is a resource, and then Soulstones is a resource. And that's resources one of the few flux resources we have where it can be spent on a variety of things. And in the case for 3rd edition, it's a really good idea to to look at what you're doing with your crew and determine like how much do those stones matter, how much do those extra stones matter, because there's several things you can do with them. Just really briefly, you can stone for more cards during the draw phase.
Yep.
Every stone you spend, you get to draw 2 cards, pitch 2 cards. So it's card cycling through your deck if you've got a bad hand. So that's really important. There's damage prevention. If your model that can spend Soulstones gets hit, after the damage flip, they can spend to try to prevent some of that damage. And again, it's you spend to flip the prevention, then you can spend additional stones to increase that prevention. So even just from those 2 abilities alone, you can see that there is a benefit to having more than just 1 or 2 stones. And that's not even getting into being able to stone for positives, putting your opponent on negatives, and then stoning for suits. Which some models, some masters and henchmen cannot use the triggers on their cards without stoning for a suit. So it's like, it's really important. Or if you're playing a summoner, you've got to get that summon off, and if you don't pull the suit you need to get your summon off, what are you going to do about that? So stones are a really, really valuable resource, and not having them allocated at the beginning of the game, it's up to you to determine how many of your 50 Soulstones you're going to put in there, up to 10.
Yep.
And making an educated decision on how you're going to go on that sliding scale is really important. I've played with as few as 2 Soulstones. I've played with as many as 10. And it radically changes some masters to do that.
And what's nice about that is you get the balance, right? So if I go full 10 Soulstones, I'm only got a 40 stone crew.
Right.
And that could matter.
That could
definitely matter. It's the same as if I walk in with 48, 49 stones worth of crews and upgrades.
Right.
Then I've only got 1 stone to work with.
Yeah.
One quick thing that's important though is that you're limited to only start off with 10 stones, but during the game there's the possibility of going above 10 stones.
Yeah,
so the 10's not the cap.
It's not the cap. It's just the hiring
right.
cap.
Right.
There's a few factions and a few models that allow you to either steal Soulstones or gain additional Soulstones. McCabe comes to mind. I think Parker has some mechanics where he can steal Soulstones from people. So those are it's definitely something though that you still need to consider, because if you have a master, for instance, that's kind of squishy, and you're playing, and that's the master you picked, and your opponent picked a master that's pretty heavy.
Yep.
Well, maybe you want some more stones and 1 less model, because, hey, that Scheme Runner is nice to have, but being able to take some damage prevention flips on a min-3 beater, that might be more important.
And also, I would imagine, too, that the pool is going to impact that as well.
Oh, absolutely.
If the pool is such that keeping your henchmen and masters alive is going to make a huge difference, then I think you need to think about
I think you got to bring some stones in. I think a safe number right now, just from preliminary play, I've played a lot of beta games, safe is still in the 4 to 6 range. If you don't know what you want to do with your stones, 4 to 6 is still pretty safe.
Yep.
But I really do encourage, like, with the ability to stone multiple times for cards and multiple times for damage prevention flips, taking all the information we're getting and putting a little bit more thought than just, if I have 4 to 6, I'm okay. Like, see if 8 might work for you. See if 3 might work for you. Give it some flux.
I think experience is going to matter here.
Absolutely.
Even if you're a veteran of previous editions of the game, I think it's changed enough that you really are going to have to experiment.
Absolutely. And it's like, I used to think one of our local meta players I've played a lot, he was always taking 8, 9, 10 stones. I was like, why are you taking so many stones? And then I tried it one time and I was like, oh.
Changes how you look at the table.
Completely changes how you look at the table, especially if you're playing a master that's like a control-based master that likes triggers and likes cards. Like being able to stone for extra cards and stone for those triggers, like that really matters. And having more stones to throw at that. And here's the thing. The thought process is like, well, if I spend all these stones on stones, then I'm sacrificing my model count. But remember, we have pass tokens.
Right.
So it's not as big a hit as you might think to go from 7 models to 6 models. It's not as big a hit.
Yeah, quantity mattered a lot more in previous editions of the game.
I feel that is accurate, and it's on quality of selection as well. Like, if you're going after this one model, and like we're talking restrictions, and we're going after a couple of models that are out of keyword, that's a couple of stones. So maybe you don't do that as often because you need to buff up your your cash
your
a little
cash.
bit.
Yep.
But maybe you do, because I think that's going to be a big trap people are going to have to deal with, is when do I hire out of keyword versus not? Because there's definitely some models that are almost auto takes for me in some of the factions I've been playing that are out of keyword, and it's like, I don't care if you're in keyword or not, that model's coming with me.
Sure.
And you just got to pay that tax. But
So the last little bit, things you can spend stones on are upgrades. So every faction has a pool of upgrades, and any model can get up to one upgrade, during hiring.
Yep.
And I think most, if not all of them, are 2 stones.
I think all of them are 2 stones. There's a couple of outliers from like Killjoy, for instance. When he deploys, he puts out like 0 stone upgrades, but that's not a part of the hiring thing. The hiring ones, I believe, every faction has 3. Mm-hmm. They're all 2 stones. I think they're all plentiful too as well, which means you can only have 2 copies of each upgrade out. All of them have a minion buff, and then the buff every other model, all models is part of it, and any model can take them. So it's like that's another decision to be made. Yep. It's like if you're playing guild and someone's got some heavy hitters on the other side, you see Nakima's coming at you. You might want to look at getting that shirt, get some armor, get some. You can't pull me.
Yep. All right, great. Well, that's how you hire in Malifaux 3rd edition. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.